There we go. Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon and welcome to the San Mateo Arboretum Society's hybrid seminar, Popular Houseplants Part 2 with Master Gardeners. The program will last approximately 60 to 90 minutes and be recorded. You can view Part 1, Houseplant Basics, on the Arboretum Society's YouTube channel. Questions about specific plants that they are discussing will be answered at that time, and general questions at the end of the program. For those viewing on Zoom, submit your questions anytime by clicking on the chat box icon at the bottom of the screen. A few days after the presentation, you'll be emailed a link to the recording and an evaluation form. Before we start, a little information about what is happening at the Arboretum Society. Our nursery in San Mateo Central Park is open Saturdays and Sundays from noon to 3 p.m. Payment is by credit, debit, Google, or Apple Pay. No cash is accepted. The nursery is staffed by volunteers and may occasionally be closed. Check our website, sanmateoarboretum.org, or call 650-579-0536, extension 2 for updated information. The Master Gardener Plant Clinic has returned and is scheduled for the same day as our seminars through November. While you're in Central Park, visit the Rose Garden, Butterfly Hummingbird Garden, and our Sun and Shade demonstration gardens. All are maintained by the Arboretum Society volunteers. Our presenters today are Cynthia Nations, Cindy Morris, and Barbara Colson. I'm looking forward to learning more about how to have healthy, beautiful houseplants. Welcome.
Thank you, Sue. It's not advancing. You're okay. Do you want the presentation now? Mm-hmm. Sure. I'm going to go ahead while she's taking care of the technology here. We want to welcome you, UC Master Gardeners. It's a wonderful organization. It's volunteer. And our mission is to serve the residents of San Mateo and San Francisco counties. And we help people with home horticulture. That means with your gardens, and now even with houseplants. And we also do answer questions on pest management and sustainable landscape practices. So it's just a really wonderful organization. And we're going to be giving you, Sue Carter will be sending you a PDF of the PowerPoint or the presentation from today. And you will be able to see our contact information, and we have a helpline. And I think that we also have a little table set up outside that you can find out more information. While we're doing this, oh, there it goes. So while we're talking about it, if you look at our UC, it's San Mateo, San Francisco Master Gardener website, we will be having a new training class in 2024 in January. So there will be information about, what you have to do to get, to apply to be a UC Master Gardener if you're interested. All right, so today our learning goals. I know a lot of you, I've talked to a few of you, Daria and Rita, a few of you before you came in, when you came in. And some of you all have houseplants, and some of you are like I was when I first had houseplants. I just had them and they either lived or they died. So it's really nice to be able to learn a lot more about houseplants. And every time we do one of these research-based presentations, we learn a lot more. So today we're going to talk briefly about understanding houseplant names, because I've always been very curious about the genus and species of different plants. And also there's so many species, so I never could get that in my head. I think you take biology when you're a freshman in high school, and maybe take some more classes after that, but never did get the genus and species thing down, but now I have a little bit. All right, Barbara is going to talk about propagation, all the different ways that you can propagate houseplants. And then we're going to go into different houseplant types, which you will know about. And if you have questions, you might keep them, write them down or something while we're giving the presentation. And then we'll be able to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. And at the end, very end of all the houseplant types, we're going to show you all the different ways that people display their houseplants, because it's really amazing. Since COVID, I know maybe a lot of you who got interested during COVID, or maybe you did before. Well, there's been a surge, and if you look at the big box stores and all the nurseries, you see a lot more different varieties and species of houseplants. So, all right. So understanding houseplant names, this is just very, very quick. So some people might look at this plant here and call it a snake plant, and some might call it a mother-in-law's tongue. Okay, that's what we usually learn first. The genus name is the first word in the plant's name. And I learned something very, very fascinating about this plant, because it used to be Sansevieria trifasciata. But now, because of all the advancement in, I don't know, and I just found this out and I double checked the research, but now it is called, excuse me, it is called, it's in the Dracaena family, which is very interesting. So it's like in this family, which doesn't even seem the same, does it? This is like a Dracaena marginata here on the side of this. So yeah, it's interesting about specific names. So when you go I just wanted to say one more thing about this. I usually keep a little database, and I will, when I buy a new plant, and this is just kind of, I don't know if it's a nerd thing or if it's just practical and the way I have to keep track, but I always look at the light. I write it down on my computer. I'll write the common name, the genus and species or variety name, and then I'll write how much light it needs, the light needs, the water needs, the fertilizing needs, and where it might be placed in your plant, in your home. And then that way you get a good idea of where you want to place it. Or sometimes you might have a place and then you search for a plant that you want to get. All right, so right now, Barbara is going to take over with houseplant propagation.
Hi, everybody. I think we'll just start right in with propagation. You propagate really when you want to either increase the number of plants you have and you like one plant, but you propagate when a plant gets too crowded in a dish or a pot, or it gets very stringy. And we're going to go through the various kinds of ways to propagate. And I've got examples here. Dividing is the first way you can propagate. And that gets to be pretty messy, so I didn't bring that sample. But basically, you take what soil you have and plant, and you put it on a surface, maybe put some plastic or newspaper underneath, and just cut the whole thing in half, the plant and the soil. And then you take some of the soil away so that you have the roots there. And then you repot it. And so that way now you have, instead of one plant, you might have 2 or 3, given how many or how crowded the plant was in your pot. Next, the best plants to divide are snake plant, which is this one. Oh, there isn't a snake. There is.
By the screen.
Oh, here. This, I don't know if the screen shows it, but this is a snake plant. And if you can see, there's a new little thing coming up here. Ferns, which we don't have. Here's a fern. Ferns, they can be divided. We don't have any double Z plants, and we don't have a peace lily here either. But those are the plants that are best to divide. Leaf stem cuttings. Now, here, what you do is you cut the leaf, and actually I should take this off so you can see what I did. I cut through a leaf. And then I put it in some rooting hormone, which is here. And then I placed it in the soil. Now I did this about a week and a half ago, and nothing has really happened. It's sort of waiting still. But once you put it in the soil and you wet it, it's a good idea to tent it, and saran wrap is the best way to do that. And keep it tight. And I've put this in a sunny window. And we'll see how long it takes to do that. So that's really a leaf stem cutting. And with any luck, I'll have 2 plants in this cup. And then I'll have to do the dividing and I'll have 2 more plants.
Can you do that with any plant?
Pardon?
Can you do that with any leaf?
I guess I just think of sturdy leaves. Actually, the best leaves to do it with. Hello? Oh, it's not moving. Because I think we have an example. We have a list of plants.
Is it not working?
Well, the snake plant is a very good one to do it because it has a very stiff leaf. And so you know when you stick it in the soil, it's not going to collapse on itself. And I don't have my script.
You want to do air layering since you have it there? We could come back to it. Why don't you talk about it?
Well, we'll talk.
You can back up on
I
that
will
one.
talk about some other ways of doing it. There are a couple other ways. One is just cutting the stem cutting, and putting it in water. And as you can see, this is a pothos. I don't know what its more scientific name is, but this, if you can see, there are 3 pieces in here. And I have another container similar to this, which has 3 or 4 pieces. And all of this was 1 plant. And the poor plant got very, very limp because it turns out there was only 1 root for about 10 feet of vine. So I decided I would just cut it up in many pieces. And now this looks like it's thriving. And so this is really stem cutting and putting it in water. Now there's another way of doing, you can stem cut and stick it in soil. And this Dieffenbachia, which I'm now going to be hidden by, this Dieffenbachia has a stem. If you can see one little lone soldier in the front, that's a stem that was cut off the Dieffenbachia and put in root hormone and then put in the soil. And so that's another way of doing stem cutting. This Dieffenbachia is over 50 years old. I bought it at a 5 and dime when I first moved to San Francisco in 1968. And how has this thing managed to be still around? It's because I've either done stem cutting or I've done air layering, which is another technique. And when we get the machine going, I can give you a list of all the plants that are good to do that with. The next method is air layering. And air layering, what you need for air layering, this is sort of going to be like Julia Child. You need sphagnum moss, root hormone, toothpicks, and something to fasten it with. You also need saran wrap. And what you do is you make a small slice, like a third of the way into a stem of a plant, a sturdy one like this Dieffenbachia. And then if you want to keep the little slit open, you put a toothpick in there. And what's really good to do is wet the toothpick and then place the wetted toothpick in rooting hormone, and then put that toothpick with the rooting hormone in the slit. Then when you've got that, you wrap around the plant this sphagnum moss and make a little kind of home for it all in the saran wrap and tie it up together. You can use these ties which come with your vegetables, or you can use this fancy tie. And you keep the sphagnum moss in there and you wet it. And where the slit is on the stalk is where roots will grow. And so then you'll have everything above will be a new plant. And then you can, if you cut the bottom, and the bottom, maybe a new plant will grow out of the bottom as well. And that's basically air layering.
Barbara, do you use, you do that at a node?
You can do it on a node, below a node, or you can do it below, basically below a leaf, below leaves. So this Dieffenbachia has a gazillion nodes. It's got nodes and it has, I don't know if you can see the nodes on the plant, but it also has where there were leaves. So there are many places you can do this. And you want to do it, actually, I did it on another one, but I cut through too far and this plant just went. So, but that's another way of propagating plants.
So you have to be willing to sacrifice that branch, because you'll cut the branch off, is that how it works? And then stick it in the soil?
Well, I did a stem cutting. I've never done branch.
Well, where you did that,
Well,
that branch is sacrificed.
this is
right?
a stem.
Yes, the stem is sacrificed. So you'll cut the whole stem off when it's done rooting.
Yeah, because the top part will have roots at the
Right.
bottom of
And
it.
then you'll plant it.
Right, so you'll have a new plant at the top, and then if you cut the bottom, probably, my experience has been that a new plant will grow out of the bottom as well. So
2 for 1.
2 for 1. And so when you, I mean, if you think all this came from one plant 50 years ago, I mean, you could just go into the business of selling Dieffenbachias.
It works now.
And
The slides working.
let's see if we go. Oh, good, here we are. Leaf cuttings, that's good for succulents. And do we have a succulent around? We don't have a succulent. With a succulent, you cut it off at the base and let then the base dry out. Basically get a callus, so it looks kind of, it doesn't look mushy anymore. Basically, you let it dry out, so when you put it eventually in the soil, it's not mush. And that way, with the leaf cutting, you'll have another plant. And jade is a really good way to do that. The snake plant, which is what we have here, the Z plant, the African violet, begonias, the Christmas cactus, and the echeveria and other succulents. That's a great way of doing leaf cuttings. We're a little bit behind in all this. And then here we talked about stem and cane rooting, which we've just discussed. And now I'll give you the examples. The best examples for stem or cane rooting is the begonia, the dragon tree, the Dieffenbachia, which I showed you, and the yucca. And air layering, as we went through with all these different things. The best plants to do that with are rubber trees, schifferas, crotons, monsteras, Swiss cheese plant, and the Diefenbachia. And now Cindy will talk about flowering plants.
How do you get your plants to flower indoors? Boy, that's a tough one. If you remember that the plants that we want to flower indoors come usually from a tropical region. And our indoor situations are not tropical. They're dry and there's not a lot of humidity. And the light isn't the same as the jungle. So it's our goal to try to create those things so that our plants can flower. Some plants are easier to flower than others. And we'll talk about the different types of flowers. And I wanted to tell you that when you're growing plants and the leaves get really green, or if you have a variegated plant and the leaves turn green, the variegation is gone. It's because it's not getting enough light. Variegated plants need a lot of light, and a lot of our blooming plants are variegated. So it's a good tip to know that you're not getting enough light. So size matters. A lot of times we go to the nursery, we buy these beautiful little blooming plants. They're lovely. We take them home and expect them to rebloom just like that. And guess what? They don't. Because they're force bloomed in the greenhouses. They know how to make them bloom, and so that they're appealing for sale. So sometimes you have to wait a little bit and grow it a little bit before it's really got the energy to produce such lovely flowers. Some plants bloom annually, some plants bloom all the time. African violets bloom a lot. Other plants, bloom once a year. So, don't expect a plant to bloom all the time, because they're not going to. Light and dark matter. A house plant, like an outdoor plant, knows when spring is here because of the increased light and the increased darkness. So it'll come out and try to bloom if it has all the situations it needs. It needs light, lots of light. Probably the most important thing with houseplants are adequate light. Don't overwater them. Read a little bit about them so you know what their fertilizing needs are, and you will be pretty successful. Here are some succulents succulents and cactuses that do well in house: Kalanchoe, Tillandsia, orchid cactus, crown thorns, pincushions, and cactus, rat tail, Peruvian apple, peanut cactus, red top cactus, and Christmas cactus. The Kalanchoe is used abundantly in the nursery industry. It's a really good indoor blooming plant. And if it gets tired indoors, you can take it outdoors and put it in your garden. The Christmas cactus also, you'll have pretty good success getting blooms on that plant. So that's a good one to buy. Do you know what it looks like? You're thinking. I think they might have some in the greenhouse. Okay. 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 And then there's these plants you'll have the most luck with blooming. The African violets on the right, begonias, anthurium, peace lily on the left, gloxemia, bromeliads. I have to tell you, I've had a peace lily or spathiphyllum for maybe 15, 20 years, never bloomed. So I decided it was next to a large plant on the bottom, sort of a little, little grouping there. So I've decided this year to move it next to the window. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping for something. No, it's the north window.
Cindy, I did the same thing and mine started blooming and I had had it there for 6 years.
Yeah,
And then I put it in a different location and lo and behold, last year it started blooming and it's blooming this year.
yeah, don't be afraid to experiment with your plants. If it's not working where it is, move it. Can't hurt. So these flowering plants need highlight. The Rieger begonia, cane begonia, shrimp plant, lipstick plant, guppy plant, and orchids. The shrimp, lipstick, and guppy are just like their names. That's what the flowers look like. The shrimp plant is a long orange, looks like a shrimp. The lipstick looks like red lipstick. And the guppy looks like a little, like the cracker, little kind of peach color guppy looking thing.
Okay, easy and low light houseplants. So how many of you all have kind of a dark home or, in a home that doesn't have a lot of light? A lot of us have that, right? We live in condos, we live in apartments. And so we're going to talk a little bit about these easy and low light houseplants. So ZZ plants, Zamioculca zamifolia, it's one of my things that I just have to learn these names. It's called a ZZ plant, and you're going to see a lot of these. Actually, I don't know if I had oh, there it is. So, well, am I going backwards or forwards? Okay, so this is a ZZ plant. This is a ZZ plant. Look how shiny it is. It's like a wonderful, wonderful plant.
I'm sorry.
Oh, and there's some
Yeah, our
more.
Christmas cactus.
Yes.
Took a hit with all the rain. So
Yeah.
it's-
Yeah, so this is a kalanchoe. I call it kalanchoe. I'm from Texas. I used to call it a calancho because it's like the Spanish. I speak a little Spanish, but this is here in I don't know why Deborah Baldwin. She's like she writes a lot of succulent books. She calls it kalanchoe.
Yeah.
So calancho or kalanchoe. I looked it up either way.
I never heard that.
Yes, and so this is the Christmas cactus, and I think that I'm going to show another picture of a Christmas
Yeah,
cactus.
it should be big.
And they're so beautiful because they just kind of flow out of the pot and then they grow very well. And I keep mine on the patio, but you can also keep it in the home. All right, let me go. Okay, so we were talking about mother-in-law time, easy, low light. We have these, actually, I live in a connected apartment to my daughter's home, and she has these all over the place because she doesn't have a lot of light. And so here they are all over. They also have variegated ones. This is the one, actually, I've called it Sansevieria all my life, but now it's going to be in the Dracaena family, which is just, I think, recent in the last few years after they did all their genetic research that they have. Lucky bamboo. Who grows a bamboo? You can either grow it in water or you can grow it in soil. I have lucky bamboo actually in my bathroom where there's just a skylight, and I just have it in this nice tall pot on a shelf, and it's just been there forever. And I just have it in rocks and water, and it just, I clean out the water about once a month, and it's really easy to grow the bamboo plants. And then also the cast iron plant, which is also pictured in this slide. All right, also we have a corn plant. Are you familiar with corn plants? The big box stores have lots of corn plants. They have a big kind of a bigger stalk, and then they have these bigger leaves that come off of it, like almost similar to a corn plant. Dragon tree, it's called Dracaena marginata, and this is a small Dracaena, but you've seen them, and they can grow up to the ceiling sometimes. We have one at our house that's up to the ceiling. Parlor palms, spider plant, there's good spider plants over there. It's kind of got some good light there, I think, but I don't know if that window is always open, but it's a good low light plant. And also the peace lily, the spathiphyllum, which Cindy was talking about, that has that, it can grow in low light, but if it has a little bit more light, you might see a really nice bloom. All right.
I'll use it for mine.
Okay.
I'll talk about it.
Okay, and so now Cindy will talk about orchids. Cindy is an expert in orchids.
Oh, I don't know about that, but Orchids. Oh, we all love orchids, and they're so much fun to have in the home. They're so pretty, but people have trouble reblooming them, and everyone's shaking their head. Usually the problem is light. They need high light. Let's progress on here. So they're in the Orchidaceae. I'm not good at the names. And divided into tribes. Most orchids are epiphytes, not all orchids, but a lot, which means they grow high in the branches and trees. So the seeds from the orchid, say a phalaenopsis, explodes, floats in the air, lands on a tree with a little moss, and it starts growing. It's good to know this, because when we talk about the care of orchids, we're going to go back and remember how they're really growing out in the forest, the rainforest, and they get wet when it rains, and then they dry, and there's no bark, there's nothing. They just lay on the leaves. They attach their leaves to the branch. They have fleshy roots, which absorb water. And they, like all flowers, they're designed to attract different kinds of insects, pollinators. That's their main goal in life, is to be pollinated and reproduce. So sometimes when you see a very unusual looking orchid, it's designed that way because there's a certain insect that will crawl in, walk around, fertilize the plant, get some pollen, and escape. So they're kind of interesting that way. There's lots of orchids. There's thousands and thousands of orchids. And the orchid enthusiasts like to experiment and hybrid the orchids. That's why we have all these really insane looking phalaenopsis orchids at the store. They don't grow that way naturally. Naturally, they're pretty plain. They're just purple or white. But we've learned how to adjust the colors and make stripes and dots and all kinds of things. So an orchid likes light, good light, and it won't bloom unless it has light. It could look beautiful, but if the light's not right, south or a west window, it will not bloom. I don't care what you feed it, doesn't matter. It needs light. Why? Because the light provides energy that the plant needs in its root system, and in the leaves and all over the plant, to create enough energy to produce these beautiful flowers. This takes a lot of energy to produce these. So light is the key. Water. Okay, so we're back in the rainforest, and our plants are on the trees, and it rains and they get wet. They get wet all over. The roots get wet. I don't know if there's any air roots on this one. There isn't. So show you. Oh, there's one. Thank you. There's an air root here. Oh, I gotta get in front of the camera. There's a root here. You can see the little fat thing. And when you water it, it turns green. That means it's absorbing the water. So you water everything, the leaves, wash them, wash everything, water everything at the sink. No ice cubes. The tropical plant, it doesn't like ice cubes. The only reason that it works is because you're not overwatering it. An ice cube barely puts any water into the plant. So take it to the sink and give it a bath. It'll love it. Temperature, it likes it pretty warm. These guys are pretty forgiving about temperature, but a lot of orchids like it warm. And our houses just aren't warm enough or humid enough. Humidity is the other thing. They really like to be humid. So these guys are pretty good. These work pretty well. That's why they're so popular, and there's so many of them. But a lot of other orchids, like a Cattleya, big fancy orchid, likes lots of humidity. Rocks on the bottom of the dish will create some humidity, or a humidifier. Fertilizer, I like to feed my orchids just a straight number, all the numbers the same. Don't get taken in with the orchid food and the blue and the pink stuff. It's, I think just a straight, like a 12, 12, 12 or 6, 6, 6 is the best. because when the plant is done blooming, it will start growing leaves. That's usually when you give it the higher nitrogen, when it's growing. Once it's done growing, then you want to give it potassium to set the buds. It gets quite complicated if you do it that way. So just do the straight numbers and you'll be good.
And Cindy, I might add that the NPK is what she's talking about. You all have seen that. And we did cover NPK and had a little, actually a little test on NPK. And so, you know, it's the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the potassium. And the nitrogen is good for the leaf growth and the root system. The middle number is good phosphorus for the flowering. And and so potassium is good for overall general root health and health.
And yeah, then it puts the micro.
So it's 666, 12, 12, 12.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Diseases, they get everything. They get mealy, scale, thrip. My advice to you is when you go out and buy an orchid, look at the orchid, look under the leaves, look in the crown. Make sure you're not bringing home a diseased plant. Because once you bring home a diseased plant, all your other plants will get it. And then that's not good. So then you have to deal with trying to get rid of the bugs. Orchids are popular gifts. They like bright light. Temperature drop to bloom. In your house, these are okay. That's nothing, you know, major to worry about. Putting them outdoors. They like being put in the shade. So being put in the shade, it gets more light than your best window in the house. But you know, the gardener blows them off the stand you have them on and they get beat up a little bit, but you can take them out for a while, especially if they have bugs. If they have bugs, take them out and the beneficial insects in your garden will eat all the bugs. That's the best way to get rid of them. I pot and bark. The growers often use moss because it's cheap. And I like bark because the air pockets in it are bigger and there's more air circulation around the roots, which is what we want. And it's not a sustainable resource because someday there won't be any bark. But if you use moss, just be careful with the watering. Don't overwater. Some bidiums are not really an indoor plant, they're an outdoor plant, but you can bring them in when they're blooming, but you need to make sure that you bring them into a cool room or the buds will just drop off immediately. Outside, they like, outside and inside, they like sunny areas, good morning sun. They are not shade plants by any means. They like some sun. If the leaves start turning brown, it means on the where it folds, like right here, then it's getting too much sun, it's burning. The leaves should be green like the leaves on this plant. If they're dark green, it means they're not getting enough light. Oh, bless you. And I like to pot in a mixture of potting soil, perlite, and bark. It's a ground orchid. It's not an air, not less terrestrial orchid. It grows in the soil, in the ground. The first time I got one, I put it in the ground. I didn't know. I just dug a hole and planted it. And it did okay, except the snails ate it to death. But it did okay. Dendrobiums. I have a dendrobium over here. Let me get it and show you. I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me. This is a dendrobium. This is a dendrobium orchid. And I think these are a little harder to grow personally. They're a cane orchid. There's lots of water in this cane. You can grow these in your home and they get really beautiful flowers. When I'm ever in Hawaii, I always see a lot of these growing in the front yards. Can you believe it? These pictures are from my garden. These are dendrobiums. They're different than this type of dendrobium. They have canes, but they can take a little cooler temperature. So there's a whole variety of different dendrobiums. They like moisture. These guys like moisture and humidity. And again, I pot them in the bark, perlite, and garden soil. Not garden soil, potting soil. Never pot anything in garden soil. Always take the soil out of a bag somewhere or compost. Okay,
All
that's all.
right, so foliage houseplants is next. We've got to all remember that all of these houseplants come from the tropics or subtropics. That's why we're always emphasizing light and humidity, moisture. So light is one of the things that we keep talking about. And I would suggest that you do look, what plant needs what light, and also water. You need to not drown them. Make sure that you don't overdrink. As a matter of fact, a minute ago, one of the members of our audience was looking at the ficus lyrata that is around the corner in this room. And I noticed she stuck her finger in there, and that's a really good indication. I go like about 1.5 inches, see if it's moist. And if it's very dry, that's when I water my houseplants. What do you guys do?
If it's a small house plant, my orchids, I water my orchids by picking up the plant. If it's light, I know it's dry.
Mhm.
I just have a sense of it now.
Right.
And I do use my finger also.
Right. And I was noticing one of the members of our audience, we were talking before that, and we're saying, if your plant is happy, it's going to tell you. And if it's not happy, it's going to tell you, because you can look at it and you can see if there's a dry leaf at the edge, or if it's not dry, or if it's, the shade of the leaf is turning lighter or darker. You can tell. So just keep in mind also the air, the ventilation, what's going on around. A lot of times, like they're grouped. Actually, I read that houseplants like to be grouped, but sometimes if one of them has a little pest, you don't want to group them. You need to take it out of there. So just keep in mind and keep track of what they look like. This is actually a very, very healthy, yes, a kalanchoe, kalanchoe. So this is a very happy one, you can tell, and I can tell by sticking my finger down here that it's just a little bit damp. It seems like it's doing very well. We need to make sure, sometimes I noticed at my daughter's house the other day that the dog had like bumped into the Dieffenbachia, and one of the leaves and that was what they call mechanical damage. So, I usually like clip it off or take care of it or make sure nothing happens to that particular leaf. All right, and also pests. In our houseplant session 1, we talked about fungus gnats. And you get fungus gnats, those little annoying, they're not fruit flies, they're fungus gnats, and they're flying all over. You wouldn't need, and we talked about this in our first series. I usually put a little bit of neem oil in the soil, because you have all of those little eggs from those gnats in the soil. So don't go around spraying stuff, trying to get them in the air. You need to treat the soil and look at the soil first.
What kind of oil?
Pardon me?
What kind of oil?
Soil?
Neem.
Oh, neem oil. It's NEEM. And if you look at our first presentation, the houseplant basics, we address all the different kinds of pests for houseplants. Fertilizer, I use natural. We also talked about this in the beginning, the first basic houseplant course. Never use anything blue or chemically based, or blue or pink. Don't use that stuff. I use a lot of marine based kind of fertilizer, and most of mine I don't use a lot of it. I dilute it, and so I'll dilute it, and maybe I'll just do it once a month, or in the spring or summer when it's flowering or growing. All right.
So you're really wasting your fertilizer if you're doing it when the plant's not growing.
It's dormant. Yeah, they're dormant in the winter. So different plants, you can select them for different purposes. And in this little area, it talked about like the plants in the shopping mall. Sometimes you might go to a shopping mall. I guess I can mention Stanford Mall. Have you been there to see? Oh, they're beautiful. It's amazing. But some of them are there so that they're going to always be there. They're not necessarily growing, but they're already big and they're there to, I think, to just be there. And then they put in all the other annuals around them. So usually they're in high light. You can do the same thing in your home. If you have a high light, it might grow more. But if you have it in like a foliage plant in a darker corner, it might not grow as much, but you might not want it to grow in a particular space as much. So you just have to choose the right plant for the right place and know your plant. And you can see if it's growing or not, and you might want to move things around. I move things around quite a bit in my home.
Cynthia,
Uh-huh.
if you do put your plant in a darker spot, you need to readjust your watering and your any kind of fertilizer.
Right.
Because the plant's not using as much energy because it's not getting sun. So it doesn't require as much nutrients and water.
Right, and so in the lower left-hand corner, there's a Ficus lyrata. And I'll tell you, this Ficus lyrata that we have in this building looks a lot more healthy. It doesn't look like it has a lot of green leaves like this one does. The silver queen, a peace lily, there's a really good example of a peace lily, it's spathiphyllum. And then, of course, the Dracaena is this one, but it's much bigger. And these things can grow all the way up to the ceiling, like I had mentioned. All right, and here we have more of a ficus. The one on the right is, it's a new plant to me, and I bought one because I think it looks so beautiful. It's a Ficus triangulata variegata, and it has these beautiful kind of like heart-shaped leaves, and they're variegated, and it's so beautiful. Also, I also managed to get one of these weeping figs because it also looks amazing. It's another kind of ficus. So we don't have to just stick with the ones we've always gotten. There's so many more species and hybrids that, that are available now. So remember, a ficus needs moderate to low light. I know that the ficus that has, like even the one on the left with a lot of leaves, sometimes if they're moved or they have a different location, the leaves will drop. Don't panic. Just let it be there for a while if you move a ficus. And, the ficus with the green leaves are the ones we're all most familiar with. All right, and Maranta, we call it a prayer plant. This is actually from my daughter's home. Just remember about Marantas that the colors will fade if you have them in too bright a light. She just has a beautiful one, this one, on her dining room table, and it just looks beautiful. You need to keep some of these moist at all times. You reduce, of course, when they're, like Cindy mentioned, you reduce the watering in the winter when they're dormant, and don't use tepid water, don't use hard water. I don't always miss my leaves regularly. What do you do, Cindy?
I don't miss them because it's very short-lived benefit for the plant.
Okay, so sometimes I miss, and I miss when I think I'm really, like trying to mother my plants, but I don't, I know that it just kind of evaporates anyway. So and these Marantas are low growing, but they're just so beautiful. Does anybody in the audience have a Maranta? Oh, they're so beautiful. Are you successful? So. Yeah. So what is not successful about a Maranta?
They give me new leaves regularly,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like it's leggy.
Okay, it's leggy. So would that be like too much? Low light. So actually I'm going to talk about succulents in a minute. When plants don't have enough light, they will stretch. It's called exfoliation, and they'll stretch, and the stems will get very long. So probably more light. Yes, but it's trying to find sunlight is what they're doing. Okay, palms. Cindy, we'll talk about palms.
Let's see where that plant I have.
It's right there.
Okay. palms. Palms are beautiful in the home because they're airy and really add to the room. I think they do. Beautiful plants. There's all different kinds. Palms come from the tropics and some come from the desert. Some even come from Alaska. And I used to be in the houseplant business. I used to be a designer. And we used to place flowering plants around our palms and ficuses. And it's really quite pretty to do. If you want to spend have the expense of it, but it's very, very pretty. And when you trim a palm, never cut the top, never, never, never. Always cut from the bottom. Cut the whole frond off. Soil, you want a fast draining soil. A good potting mix works fine. They like water. Don't let them get dried out too much. Temperature, they like it warm. They like a nice warm house. Humidity. If they don't get humidity, the plants will get brown. The leaves will get brown. I don't know if any of you have experienced browning on your leaves. It's lack of humidity. Yes, well.
The tips are browning, just the very tips of very few fronds. Otherwise, that plant looks very.
It's probably humidity.
Humidity.
Mhm.
Repeat the question for the Zoom.
Yes. Will I take one?
Well, repeat the question.
I'm
so the
sorry.
Zoom audience
Sorry.
can hear it.
Her palm is turning brown on the tips, and the answer is lack of humidity. And fertilizer, it likes to be fed. So I fertilize maybe 3-4 times a year with a diluted fertilizer or organic fertilizer. I use kelp and I use fish emulsion. It stinks, but the plants love it. This is a fan palm on the left that grows in the desert, and it's quite pretty. It'd be very pretty in a home. This would take lower humidity. So these are some palms that will grow in your home: a parlor palm, a fan palm, Kentia palm, Phoenix robellini, and a lady palm. And now we have succulents and cacti.
Succulents are my love. Who has succulents in their yard or their home as well? All right, never estimate. They're just so compact and they just grow pretty well. You give them some light, you give them very little water. They don't need a lot of care. And I'm really very nuts about succulents.
She is.
Is like there in my whole yard and home inside. So on your left, you see a burrow cactus, or I mean a burrow succulent. They call it burrow. I forgot the genus and species.
Okay, we'll forgive you.
Okay, all right. So just like all our other plants, ensure they get enough light. And this is, on the picture. I keep on knocking. It is top heavy.
Here, let me take it. We're done with it.
So this is your Christmas cactus, and that's a picture of how it will grow. That is Cindy's Christmas cactus. I have several in my yard and several on my covered patio that's almost like indoors as well. So ensure they get enough light. They need to be rotated because they'll always, your succulents and cacti will, well, not cacti as much as succulents, they will tend to grow to the light, all right? Water according to the season, just like all the other plants. In the winter, they're going to be more dormant than in the spring and summer. Right now, if you can notice some of your cacti, your succulents might be blooming. Water the soil directly. They need to be like soaked around the edge, but I don't usually get a lot of water on top of my succulents. I don't think it's really that good for leaves. No. So yeah. So important. Choose a container with drainage. If you have anything that's stopped up in there, you know that you will get root rot and they will definitely die. I think that a lot of people who have succulents have trouble with them because they do get root rot. They don't need water a lot. I noticed it was an outdoor garden, but I recently, actually just a few weeks ago, helped plant a garden and a little garden space of succulents in the Menlo Commons. They were so, they kept on watering them. And they kept saying, she sent me an SOS email saying, oh, they don't look good. They don't look good. And I said, just don't water them for a long time. We just had rain. So just make sure your indoor succulents as well. No, not so much water. Also, same kind of things, getting rid of bugs. I usually use like a 70% alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and I spray the soil around, and the alcohol is a pretty good way, and then you don't have to spend a lot of money on chemicals, which you shouldn't use anyway. All right, and I fertilize if at all. I don't think that succulents need that much fertilizer, but I do use a little bit of, like what she said, like the marine-based water, and I dilute it a lot for your succulents, but they don't seem to need a lot of succulents to thrive, fertilizer to thrive. Okay, these are really a really good list of successful houseplant succulents. Jade plant, I came from El Paso, Texas. That was about the only succulent we could grow in El Paso, Texas. So it's a type of crashula. A burro's tail, which is also pictured here in that photo. A panda plant, which is also a type of kalanchoe. It's a different kind of kalanchoe. Flaming Katy is another, and it has like beautiful flowers on it. A zebra plant. I don't know if you've seen those little, they have like little white and dark green stripes, zebra plants. Moon cactus, I don't have one of those. I don't know what that is actually. Moon cactus.
They're little round cactuses, they're like rocks, I think.
Oh, I do, yes. I
They grow a little
didn't,
bud on top.
right, okay, yes, that's what that is. And I haven't had those because they're not real showy. They're just like they look like rocks. And they do have a beautiful flower though. I do know they do have in certain times of the year. A cotyledon, which is called bear's paw, an ox tongue, which is like a type of gasteria, and a fairy castle cactus, which has like these like little points over, and it does look, it's fun, and they do look like little castles. Okay, also hanging, trailing, and climbing houseplants. You can, this is the pothos that I think we were talking about right here, the pothos plant. And there's all kinds of different shades of the pothos. And so there's one that's just a regular pothos aerium. And I know that there's a philodendron that is heart-shaped. There's also a new one, a pothos called neon pothos, and it's a bright green color that I recently got. I don't know if you all have seen that. And then related to the burro's tail on the right, it's called string of fish hooks. So they have, they have all of these kind of hanging plants. You've all seen that that one that is string of pearls, those succulents, they're succulents. All right, you can either grow them downwards, or you can also put them growing up on a trellis. I know that indoors, I didn't have room for it to hang down, so I put a trellis in the back of it of my neon pothos, and I let it grow up. So they can grow either way. All right, this is an inch plant, and I love this inch plant. And we happen to have, this was taken from our garden here, our greenhouse. And this, have you seen this one? It's oh, I forgot to hold it up. So this inch plant is called Transcandentia zebrina. Okay, and I think that a lot of you have seen these. These don't look like they're quite as purple, but this one is hanging, and it's you can tell that it's just a beautiful plant. And I honestly have never seen it growing flowers. Have you all seen the flowers?
I think I have one at home.
Oh, okay, all right. See, she has so many, she doesn't even know what she has. Okay, so it does need bright light. I even grow them outside. So I have one growing inside and I have one growing outside. And I even have some rooting in water, which I'll show you when we do the houseplant displays. So repot when leggy, not bushy. This one is kind of leggy. It might need some light.
It is very late.
It's very, very leggy. As a matter of fact, I've never seen one that leggy. Mine are mostly like this. Okay, and you
Mine
can,
is very, very round. Do they go dormant in the winter?
I think they do grow
Yeah,
grow
mine
dormant.
is very, round, it's very low.
Yes, and they're
Mine's
really
outdoors.
easy to root, very easy to root, those plants. All right, Hoyas. So I can tell you the one on the left is actually my favorite and actually my most expensive house plant. It's a Hoya, Harmsii, I think it's called Hoya Harmsii. And I wanted to tell you the one that's in the little yellow pot, you can see those around Valentine's Day. They will not grow and they will not root. They have just taken that, but it'll last like 3 or 4 months, you know, in a little pot like that. But they don't have any roots or anything. But I did purchase this one on the left that has grown. And matter of fact, I paid more money than I usually pay for 3 leaves, but now it's grown to that many leaves, which is a good thing. Also, I have, you know, the one that is very common is the Hoya that is on the right side. And those little Hoyas, they have such a great little blossom. It just takes your breath away when you look at that little flower. And it's so beautiful. When the flowers die, the directions say to leave them on the stem because another flower will bloom the next season in exactly that same space. So you just let the flower die and stay there. That was an interesting thing about that Hoya.
I have a question. I have like around 3, 4 years and only have one leaf. I had them planted.
Uh-huh.
They made roots and I planted them. They're not growing. They've been like with me around 5 months or 6 months and there's no change.
You know what? They're very slow growing. Oh, excuse me. So a member of our audience has a Hoya and it has 3 leaves, you said, and it hasn't grown and she's had it for 5 months. Well, what's happened is I think that you might consider the light that it's in. Also, make sure you're not overwatering it. And also Hoyas, these Hoyas grow very, very slowly.
And
So just know
it's
that.
in been just coming out of a dormant season.
Yeah,
So
so
it'll start growing in the summer.
Yeah.
It should grow in the summer.
don't give up yet.
Yeah, don't give up.
Don't give up. So they're very slow growing. I waited for that Hoya that I have in the picture. I waited for 2 years for it to start blooming.
I have them that long at home, out in my back fence.
Yeah, that's how these are.
It'll grow. Mine is old too.
Okay.
We're better with age. Okay, to go back, I hit. Okay, nothing's happening. Okay, bulbs. Oh, it's not working here. Bulbs, not really something you grow indoors, but you can grow a few things indoors temporarily, like the amaryllis. The picture before this shows the amaryllis in the wax. Anyone buy those this year? Oh my God, those things are fabulous. They're the amaryllis bulbs and they're in wax, covered with wax. You take them home, you do nothing. You don't water it, you don't put it in soil, you don't do anything. They're great gifts. I put them in a glass vase, square vase with marbles. Set the amaryllis on top with some ribbons and gave them away as gifts. My amaryllis had four blooming stems. I just no. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's
That's what I think. I didn't want to back up. That's forward.
I want it to go back.
Just go slower. Slower. I don't know why it keeps dying.
Okay, that's not
Go
it.
backwards. Come on.
It only goes forward.
It does not work
There we go.
backwards.
Okay, here we are. So these are the wax covered bulbs. I totally recommend them next year, if for you or for gifts. Yes.
Doesn't that stop them from putting them back in the garden and growing again the next year?
The question is, does that a wax covered amaryllis bulb, does that stop you from putting it in the yard? No. I cut the wax off
Oh,
and I have a whole pot full of amaryllis. And I put it in. We'll see next year, but I think it's okay. The bulb wasn't mushy or anything, so I think we're good. So we can grow paper whites, and this is grape hyacinth on the other side. We can either put them in the soil, or we could put them in, we could force them in a forcing jar with water.
You know, you might be talking about, excuse me, the paper whites. I think the paper whites, you need to compost them after, but I think the bulbs, you know, that's still.
You know, I would even try planting the bulbs. We'll get to that in just a sec. These are some amaryllis and some hyperpesium trums on the other side. I have the green and red one. It's quite pretty. One is from South Africa. They're also called belladonnas, you know, the beautiful pink flowers that pop up in the fall. Those are also amaryllis. And the ones on the other side are from South America. So here's some information if you do want to plant paper whites in soil. Grape hyacinth bulbs also are good for forcing. I think they get a little leggy inside, but you can certainly give it a try. Large house plants. This plant is my plant, and I've had it for about 38 years. And I have to tell you, it was looking pretty poor last year. The leaves were little, they weren't split. It looked bad. So I thought outside. So I took it outside, and it's just beautiful. I really watered it and fed it, and it just is so happy. It's so revitalized. I'm so pleased. I got it for when my father passed away, and it reminds me of my father. So I was very happy to have it revived. The big house plants like light, lots of light. You can see this plant here, its edges are a little brown. That's lack of humidity, more than likely. Or it's being overwatered, but usually the leaves are yellow, not brown tipped when it's overwatered. If your plant gets too big for the pot, you have to repot it. Use it one pot size up. Don't get don't take it into a huge pot. Prune and pinch so that it stays nice and compact. And we do that at the node. Does everyone know what a node is? It's a little lump in the stem. And actually I wanted to show you, because I know everybody always wants to know what to do with an orchid after it blooms. And I'm going to show you that right now. After the orchid blooms, and you want it to rebloom, you take it down to the node that has the most growth in it. This one doesn't have a lot in it. There's one node down here that's pretty juicy. So you can cut right above the node and you might get a new stem. Once the stem is dead and done, cut it off at the bottom. Don't keep it. Doesn't do any good. Just cut it off. I just wanted to throw that in. I forgot. Okay. Cut the dead leaves off. Cut the brown leaves off, and make sure you pick the right variety for your home, for your light, because that's really important. This is a ficus lyrata. It's getting a lot of attention today. These are some different ficuses that you can grow in your home. On the left is a ficus lyrata leaf. A benjamina is the small leaf that's most common. I mean, I go to foreign countries and I see these ficus benjamina trees. They're huge, beautiful. The Elasticia is a rubber plant and a rubber tree, and very pretty today, variegated colors, does very well in the home. And an ollie is also very pretty. It's a long, narrow leaf, and it's kind of an umbrella looking hanging. And palms are also nice in the home. The rafus palm, the bamboo palm, ponytail palm, and the sago. This is a sago palm on the picture, but sagos are poisonous, so you need to be careful. So is the Dieffenbachia, by the way.
Isn't the Dieffenbachia also called giant dumb cane?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Sure is.
Sick.
Dumb cane, because it's woo, makes you numb.
It paralyzes.
Mhm.
There's a chemical in there that stiffens your tongue and then you can't talk, so that's why I call it the dumb cane.
So don't eat it.
And don't let your pets have it. either.
Yeah. Dracaenas, which we've been talking a lot about, the Janet Craigie is the green strappy leaf, most popular. It's a big wide green leaf. And these guys don't need a lot of light. They need less light because those leaves are so strappy. They take in a lot of energy, so they don't need to be in such high light. So if you have a corner that's bright but not in direct light, these are the guys. The marginata, this is a marginata. Very pretty. Pink and white and green. A corn plant is green and yellow. That's a type of Dracaena. And this picture here is a Warnicki. It's green and white. Now, if these guys don't get enough light, the colors will disappear. They'll just turn green. I'm sure you've had that happen at home. You planted something and it's not the same color as when you bought it. So that's why, light. Ferns. Ferns are really popular, but they can be a little picky in our homes because they come from the tropical forests. Many of them are growing trees, and they get high humidity and moisture. Oops, sorry, pushed the wrong button. There's some ferns from my garden that I grow at home. This is a bird nest fern, and I put it in because I wanted to show you the brownness around the leaf. That's from lack of humidity. It took me a long time to figure that out. I thought something was eating it, but no, it's humidity. The one in the middle is called a rabbit foot fern because the roots are furry. It's very nice inside. It can get pretty big. The bottom is a Boston fern, which I'm sure everybody's grown a Boston fern sometime in their life. Very nice. And the big one on the right is a Japanese holly fern, very pretty. It's very drapey, a big frond. It's very nice. And the little one on the top is called a brake fern. This isn't a brake fern. This is, but the leaves, it's not like that actually. It's, I'm sure you've seen it. It's just a common fern looking fern. They like to be fed. Ferns like to be fed. They like it hot or warm, and they like it humid. And repot ferns, not a lot of sun, no. They're understory plants, and they grow under trees, so it's filtered light. So if you have a darker corner, these guys will work. And outside in your garden too. These are the ferns we just saw. Okay.
Okay, some of my favorite, this is one of my favorite parts because once we learn about all of the different kinds of types of houseplants and how to care for them, we also need to, you know, find a place in our home where they'll grow and they'll be very, very happy. So in the upper left-hand corner, you see floating shelves. A lot of people will, you know, especially in small apartments, a lot of these are really good. Floating shelves on the left, and then they have this whole bookcase situation with beautiful knickknacks and plants hanging over. You can see all the different trailing plants, and it looks like they have like quite a array of plants growing there. On the left, this was new to me, using a clothes rack for a plant hanger, and sometimes people use these for room dividers, or you're in a small place, you might need to like section off the bedroom from the living area. So you could use shelves, or you can use clothes racks. It's just amazing what people have come up with, and you can see all kinds of ideas on the internet. Plant displays, actually, these are like mine. You can tell I do love succulents, and I have them all over my home. And I'm always finding little knickknacks to put them in, and they don't really require a lot of care. These are like, low light houseplants, and you can see, you can just see that they're just very happy where they are, and they really don't require a lot of time or effort. These are also the one on the left. I found these glass globes. I found them in different shapes, and I'm actually rooting the plants. I'm rooting those right now in my home on the left. And then the ones on the right are very, very, they're like all of those little vials that you can put water in. And I know that they're sold commercially, and we're always supposed to have 3 sources. I know the name of the source, but afterwards I can tell you the name of the one person that I know, or the one artist that I know. So this is another one on the left. It's Tillandsia. You can tell that I do love these plants. I created these mobiles out of those globes, and I hung all my Tillandsia in there. They're a little bit harder to take care of, because every 2 weeks or so I have to take them all out of there and put them in the sink and give the Tillandsia. If you're familiar with Tillandsia, they're air plants. And
They do need water.
they do need water.
Please water them.
Yes, they do. I soak them in a tub for, at least maybe every 10 days, or, so, and I also live very close to the ocean in Half Moon Bay, so I know that I have a lot of humidity. The middle, actually, that's a display for Tillandsia in my bathroom, and those are hangers, to hang towels or something on. And so I just got those and decided I'd stick, and they get a lot of humidity in my bathroom. So I just stick the air plants right there in the middle there. Also, there's so many different kinds of, the cactus shaped pot. A lot of times I'll go shopping, and I guess I can name 3. I don't know, like Marshall's or TJ Maxx, or help me here, a nursery store. Tuesday morning. Some of those times they have beautiful, especially this time of year. They have Home Goods. They have amazing different kinds of plant containers if you want something different.
I agree.
It's like so great to go to those stores this time of year. For some reason, it's not going.
Doing it again.
Yeah, this is the best part. All the different.
It's not.
Try again.
No. Anyway, while we're trying to get that done, maybe we can take a few questions from the audience. Would you?
Sure.
Yeah, we can just all 3 kind of chime in. You had a question back there a while ago. Did you?
No, I was just gonna say, my sister-in-law sent me one of those amaryllis in the wax.
Yeah.
And the instruction says they won't bloom. They're not intended.
Oh, well, we'll find out.
They probably just want you to buy them.
Well, I mean, they won't probably rebloom in the house, but maybe in the soil they will. We'll see.
And I did notice, I did read, because I did the research on the paper whites, and it says that they'll just be compostable at the end of the time. I've always just thrown them away automatically. I don't know why. Yeah. So it'll be an interesting experiment.
If you grow them in the soil,
Okay.
you could probably take them out to the garden, but if you grow them in the water, it probably is because that the plant doesn't have enough energy to rebloom. But if you put them in the soil and they don't grow, the bulb will rot and make better soil. So
Well, water doesn't have a lot of food in it.
no, it
for a
doesn't.
plant, and that's why it really needs soil. It's one way to start a plant. and water. But then it really needs all the nutrients that it can get from the soil. So the water is just kind of a stopgap.
Mhm.
And so you really need the soil.
Did you have another question?
I have a question about orchids. So whenever I water my orchids and one little drip gets in between the leaves, that bottom leaf falls off. So you mentioned you get yours all wet and everything happens, like you're getting water in those.
Your bottom leaf falls off,
Every time.
because
you
it's
water-
probably done.
Repeat the question.
Probably too wet.
Watering, when she waters her orchids, and she gets a little water in the crease in the center, the leaves turn yellow and fall off.
No, just that one leaf.
That one leaf falls off. The bottom, it's not uncommon for the bottom leaves to fall off.
So wherever that water drop gets, that bottom, the leaf underneath it falls off.
I think it's only
Yeah.
coincidence.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay, so you literally get yours all wet and.
So
it's-
you can turn the plant upside, kind of
Yeah.
tilt it and get the water out, but I don't think that's why the leaf is falling off.
Huh.
Because the leaves will turn yellow with age
Not
and
bad.
fall off.
Okay.
If it's a top leaf, then that's concerning. But if it's a bottom leaf, it's not concerning.
Okay, we might finish the rest of these. They're the window hangers. Oh, I guess I better get out of the way. The window hangers, I think that there weren't that many left. Building shelves in your windows, that would create a lot of light, of space. And also, I thought that was really interesting, bed slats for hanging plants. So I had never, ever seen that, but how you can find those little containers and then you can do those little S hooks and do it that way. So bed slats, I thought that was a good one. And maybe we should, well, that's okay. And you all will get a copy of the PDF. I just want to remind you all, when you get your copy, you will find the helpline information from UC Master Gardeners. And are there any other questions about houseplants?
Are there any Zoom questions? Can you?
There is a Zoom question. Is root hormone critical for propagation, or is it just helpful? Will it speed up root growth?
The question is root hormone necessary for propagation? It's
No.
not necessary, but it does have the same material that the node has. A meristemic cells in it, and the root hormone has the same type of basis, is the same. So it only aids in adding more growth. Do you agree?
Well, basically, I think it helps it. It just accelerates what it would do naturally. And so it just gives it an extra shot of
Yeah.
juice, basically.
It has the same basic hormones as a plant, so it only adds. Any other questions?
A follow-on question is, can you use apple cider vinegar instead of root hormone?
Never heard of that.
Well, try it and see what happens.
I've never heard of that one. It seems like the acid might not
Well,
work.
because the main purpose of the root hormone is to add to the plant something similar to the meristemic fluid cells at the node. And I don't think apple cider has those qualities.
I would think it would kill it.
Yeah.
A question on,
Yes.
there's a question on air layering. Is there a minimum stem diameter that you need to do air layering?
Probably, because actually an inch would be a good diameter. Because I tried it on the Dieffenbachia and I cut in and it went boom, it just dropped because I cut too much. You have to be very careful. So probably having at least 3/4 to an inch thickness in diameter of a stem would help, because it needs to have enough strength to stay vertical when you put all the moss and everything around it, because the weight of that could just make it tilt over. So you need a sturdy enough stem.
Okay. Are there any other questions, Kevin?
None posted? Nope.
Okay, thank you. So here we go, back with the displays. There's a few more. The one on the picture on the left, if you all go to craft shows and things, I'm always on the lookout. That's another good way to display Tillandsia or air plants. The middle, there's all kinds of beautiful baskets that you can display air plants in. And also, actually, a friend of mine gave me that beautiful piece of wood. I don't know where he got it, but I ended up painting owls and then putting a Tillandsia in there too. So you can tell my house is kind of overloaded right now.
The air ferns are so pretty, just sticking in their plants.
Yes.
I have a ball of air ferns that I bought a long time ago, and I just take them off and put them in my orchids. It looks pretty.
Okay, so we're going to close with this beautiful quote. We breathe easier among the trees. We smile at the beauty of flowers. Plants are an excuse to slow down, a reason to breathe, and an opportunity to learn. So you can bring that beauty indoors. It's just wonderful what it does to your homes. What's next? Our third session is already actually almost completed. It'll be a question and answer series. So basically, we've already presented a houseplant question and answer. And at that time, the participants were entered their questions about houseplants. So we took all of the main questions that were asked during that session, and we created a presentation with that. And also, if you come to session 3, you will be able to put your own questions into the registration. All right, and the subsequent slides are all the information that you'll need. Oh, actually, there's our references. It's just not going. And then it'll tell you all about Master Gardeners in the last slides.
And I would just like to let everybody know that the Master Gardeners, have a plant clinic here once a month at the Arboretum over in the corner, and we answer plant questions. So it's usually the first Sunday of the month.
So thank you all for. Yes.
And we also have a helpline.
And the helpline information will be on your presentation. So thank you all for coming. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for sitting through all our glitches.
Well, thank you. That was an amazing program. Great slides, so much information. I'm definitely going to be looking at it a lot. I've learned a lot. Arboretum had a table at the San Mateo Garden Center's open house last weekend, and we met a young man who had a table next to us, had amazing, unusual, they're mostly houseplants, weren't they, Carol, or were they indoor, outdoor?
They were mostly houseplants.
Mostly houseplants. He's in San Bruno. It's called Las Selvas, 671 San Mateo Avenue in San Bruno. Everything was unusual. He had a crowd around him the whole time. Brought a lot of people to our table, so we were pleased.
Yeah.
And Carol and I both bought some plants from us. But anyway,
Really knowledgeable.
very knowledgeable, and they grow a lot of their own plants. They have a nursery in the back, and then a retail shop in front.
Yeah.
So Las Selvas, 671 San Mateo Avenue in San Bruno. So worth checking out. So in a few days, you have a question?
Yes, you mentioned that you have a third session, but it's not.
It's not scheduled yet.
Oh, okay.
We'll be working on next year's schedule and definitely include that. It sounds like it will be a very popular program. So in a few days, everyone will be emailed a link to a recording of this presentation and an evaluation form. Any unanswered questions can be addressed at that time, and we appreciate feedback on what worked and where we can improve. Please join us for future seminars and workshops. Our June 4th seminar will be California Native Gardening with Master Gardener Leslie Muneman. Thank you. I need help on pronouncing some of these last names. And the Arboretum is going to have an open house on Saturday, May 20th from noon to 4 p.m. We'll have garden-related vendors and organizations. Master Gardeners will be here. Plant sales, raffle. We're going to have tours of the rose garden, heritage trees, children's programs, face painting, food, drinks, and more. So come by noon to 4 on Saturday, May 20th. And a huge thank you to the Master Gardeners for that terrific program. And Kathy and Kevin for handling the technical part of today's program.
Sure.
Thank you, Kathy. The Arboretum Society has a variety of volunteer opportunities from the greenhouse, nursery, educational team can always use some new help and ideas, and also technical. Kathy says she wants some help, and Kevin. So if anybody has those skills and wants to come and help once a month, would be most appreciated. So you can let us know by completing information on the evaluation form or emailing us at info@sanmataoarboretum.org. Thank you, everyone. The program is now finished.
There's actually, your application,